My name is Jessie Fuentes. I am the co-chair of the Puerto Rican Agenda and the director of policy with the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. We are here today to denounce the anti-Blackness that was exhibited by Councilwoman Nury Martinez and her colleagues in the Los Angeles City Council. On Sunday, we all bared witness to an audio recording that had been put out by the Los Angeles Times on a conversation that took place a year ago. A conversation that was rooted in racism and homophobia. A conversation about a 2-year-old black young boy, the son of Nury Martinez's colleague in City Council. In Chicago, the Latino and black community will not stand for that type of racism or homophobia. Today I have the pleasure of having city colleagues, state legislators, and community members who will have a conversation about the healing, the consciousness building, and the action that we must take to be able to address, combat, and grapple with anti-Blackness in the Latino community. First to that conversation, I want to introduce to you 26th Ward Alderman Roberto Maldonado.
Thank you, Jessie, and thank you for your leadership in calling upon this press conference. I'm very sad and angry as a Puerto Rican black that grew up in Puerto Rico with a lot of racial slurs that were thrown at me as I was growing up. And it's really heartbroken when I see and observe Latino elected officials bashing racially African Americans. I mean, as minorities as we are, we should be empowering each other rather than dismantling and tearing us apart. It is sad. I mean, former Congressman Gutierrez do know that during the Harold Washington years, there was a very strong struggle, fight, effort to build a strong coalition between African Americans and Latinos. Back then, we were a very small minority. Now we have become the largest minority. And even though that over the decades, and the Congressman can attest to that, there's always been a lot of fight and struggle between us, between our African American leaders and the Latino leaders for power. Because at the end of the day, it's all about power. That is what we struggle and fought about. And I think that this is a moment that should taught us that we should be in this together. Because if we join forces, Latinos and African Americans, we will become the largest minority group in this country. And we can really determine what happens in this country and in this city politically as well. But the only way that we can do that is by showing respect to each other and not having these ego trips that one group is better than the other. What happened in Los Angeles by the former president of the city council, it is a shame, shameful, and I hope that that type of action never happened again over there, and certainly I don't want that to happen in the city of Chicago.
I would like to introduce you now to our Congressman Jesus Chuy Garcia.
Good afternoon to all. Like my colleagues who just spoke, members of the Latino community have expressed, we are both deeply disappointed and enraged at what we have heard and witnessed. Harm has been done to people of African ancestry in the Americas and also to people of indigenous ancestry. They are our sisters and brothers. And if they are harmed through the type of language that we have heard, they need to, beyond apologizing, atone for what they have done, because it affects all of our families. And in Chicago, and places, cities, and communities across the country, I want you to know there are good people working to advance both of our peoples and other people as well. We fight against racism, we struggle against oppression, and we want to uplift the dignity of every human being. What we heard and witnessed goes against a long history of struggle and a fight for unity and understanding that is rooted in love in this city. And while we condemn what has happened, we also call for there to be restorative justice by those individuals to raise awareness and to show that a way forward comes after one inflicts harm. Whether that harm is intentional or not, the harm needs to be repaired and the damage needs to be restored. This is a moment for restorative justice. And I say this knowing some of the individuals that were involved in this conversation. So I appeal to their better senses to come forward and show a way forward. There is a way forward. There is atonement, and most importantly, there is restorative justice to be done. I'm proud to say that in the U.S. Congress, the Congressional Black Caucus, the Asian Caucus, and the Hispanic Caucus, we work together. As a matter of fact, we're working together now to address a piece of immigration reform in the lame duck session of Congress. And the Congressional Black Caucus with the Hispanic and Asian caucuses have affirmed that we will fight together to try to pass immigration reform, especially for young people who have DACA. We have a great legacy to look at in Chicago when we came together to make history and elect Harold Washington and bring communities that were locked out of the political process and in government in Chicago. We triumphed. It was a moment to be proud of. The actions of these individuals in LA have sought to take us back. We will not go back, and we want everyone in Chicagoland to know that we are hurt by what we have heard and that we call for restorative justice in LA and across the country. We must model the way for a united way forward that's rooted in dignity and love. Thank you.
I now would like to introduce to you a sister of mine in the State Senate Assembly, Senator Cristina Paccione-Zayas.
Good afternoon. I am once again incensed, disappointed, and ashamed by that LA Council President Nury Martinez and her two colleagues who conspired with her to build political power expressed through racist and homophobic comments. I want to mention that Senator Marquino can't be with us today. He represents this area, but he wanted me to express a few words on his behalf. He chaired the Committee for Redistricting in the General Assembly. And he and other members of the Latino Legislative Caucus understood the importance of working collaboratively with our siblings in the Black Legislative Caucus, and how important it was that if we work together, we all win. While the comments of the city council, former city council president, may have been narrowly directed, as community leaders, as elected officials, we know that there is power in what we say, what it reveals, and its impact. Brown power cannot, will not, be built on undermining Black and Indigenous communities, because we are them and they are us. This is far from the example of what Latino leadership can look and should look like. We stand with the Black community of Los Angeles because we know instances just like this cause the community to question the genuineness of our alliance with the Black community. We also have to layer in that context of the everyday and rightful anxiety about their place in Los Angeles, because they've seen the size of their population shrink to under 10% of the city population. We stand with Indigenous people because, as we were reminded on Monday, we have a lot of work to do with reconciliation, with healing, with reparations. And we stand with our LGBTQ siblings because the comments were also an attack on the gay couple that was raising their son. We can't publicly form these coalitions to fight for economic justice and to fight against police brutality and then directly undermine them behind closed doors. If that is how leadership talks when they don't think that they're publicly facing or anyone is noticing, how can we expect the Black community to trust and believe that Latino leadership anywhere truly has their back? This incident, along with the daily racist incidents that are happening everywhere around us, demand more of us, better of us in our community. We must show up now without question nor conditions. And while the event happened in LA, hate transcends geography. And it's becoming more and more visible. And it's our responsibility to speak out against it and embody the solidarity we expect. We must go beyond these superficial statements and really work towards a genuine compañerismo and take concrete action that goes beyond addressing intra-community anti-Black, anti-Indigenous attitudes and behaviors. This work is ongoing and it must continue, and the time now calls for our community to model that we are pro-Black, we are pro-Indigenous, we are pro-LGBTQ, remembering that members of our community identify as Black. They also identify as Indigenous. They also identify as LGBTQ. Anything less of that, understanding it reflects self-hatred. It reflects internal colonialism. And our task is to stand shoulder to shoulder and put the work in to lift up and center our shared humanity and dignity. And this scenario isn't too far from the ones in our own backyard. I'm sure folks have been seeing all kinds of crazy yard signs, fake newspapers, misleading graphics around the Safety Act. These tools purposely use Black lives as fodder to stoke fear and lean in on racist stereotypes. And we have an obligation to call for rightful, true, and accurate information. It is just as important to call out the anti-Blackness being used by opponents and the tacit role we play as electeds when we don't explicitly call that out. So as a Latina in a position of political leadership, I am keenly aware of how important it is to speak up in this situation. My silence equals complicity. I'm mindful in my role that I'm senator to everyone. And the role I serve as a leader in my community. And I'm calling on our community to stand with me to do and be better. And to all of us in the Latino community, just because our bloodlines include African and indigenous and European ancestors, and our families may reflect a beautiful spectrum of color, we're not exempt from the learned behaviors and patterns of bigotry, of racism, of colorism. We must continue to center the lived experience of Black lives, of Afro-Latinos, of Indigenas, and a community, and as a community, build an anti-racist, inclusive culture to replace the prejudice that still linger. At this time, I want to call my colleague, my brother, my friend in the Senate representing the 13th District. He's the co-chair of the Illinois Legislative Black Caucus and a leader in advancing solutions such as the Safety Act to ensure public safety for all. Senator Robert Peters.
Thank you, Senator Paccione-Zayas. I appreciate your leadership and commitment to this fight. I'm State Senator Robert Peters of the 13th District and Chair of the Senate Black Caucus. I appreciate these Latinx leaders for hosting this press conference to talk about what happened in LA. Since the summer of 2020, we have seen a backlash against the demands of the George Floyd and Breonna Taylor protests. Protests that pushed us to dream of a world that is less violent and more just. A world where public safety policies evolve and expand. The summer of 2020 was a call for solidarity. What makes me so upset about what happened in LA was that they attacked Black people, Korean people, Oaxacan people, Jewish people, queer people. It was every level of racism and anti-Semitism, and it was a reminder of how far we are from a place of solidarity. What is so upsetting is that I felt an immediate sense of dread about what is happening here in Illinois. What is said behind my back? What are the attacks on the Safety Act all about?
Yes.
Why is it that an entire damn fucking party can build a political agenda on the imagery of a dangerous Black man? And why isn't it being called out? Call it out! This is dangerous. It's not just LA, it's here. This week I was sent pictures in the west suburbs of Lyle of racist yard signs that said, "Don't let the Black Caucus write your laws." It was a real mask-off moment. We are so off from a place of solidarity. I stand here a bit exhausted. I am exhausted by the two-bit racist electeds, activists, and Fox News wannabes who are openly dancing with hatred. I am exhausted by the people who want to join their party but are too scared to look into the mirror to see themselves for who they really are. If you're a Democrat, or you're here in LA, don't just join in the brutality of hatred, racism, and anti-Semitism. But I look at this press conference and I am reminded of a kernel of hope. A kernel that we can continue to grow. This is what solidarity looks like. Solidarity is understanding that an immigrant detention center and a state prison are the same thing.
That's right.
Solidarity is understanding a financial crisis in Puerto Rico is no different than a financial crisis in South Shore. Solidarity is knowing a hurricane that causes destruction in a Latinx island is the same hurricane that causes destruction in a Creole city in the South.
That's right.
Solidarity is knowing there's very little between Toledo and Laquan. Just as I stand here exhausted by the American ghosts of Mussolini and Bull Connor, I stand here hopeful that we can come together, connected with a vision of Chicago that isn't segregated by tracks and asphalt, In Illinois, where I-80 isn't a border. In a country that understands that we have a large and vibrant, multiracial, multi-generational working class that deserves better. Way better. So thank you for having me. We have more to come.
I want to thank our leaders in the Senate Assembly for doing the work and building coalition. I want to bring up our former Congressman, Luis Gutierrez.
Thank you all for coming here. When I first listened to the audio on Monday, you know, I went to a place where I was going to feel secure in how I was thinking and how I was feeling, at the anger, at the outrage. I was feeling also humiliated as a Latino because they don't speak for me. They don't speak for us. And I wanted to make sure that our black brothers and sisters know they don't speak for us. So I called Dr. Jose Lopez and I said, Jose, we have to do something. We can't stay silent. We can't stay quiet. Within minutes, I was with Jessie on the phone. And thank you, Jessie, for your wonderful leadership, organizing this event. We need people like you to help us bring us together. So I appreciate it. Roberto, you know how I feel about you. Let me just say a couple of things. I was born in 1953, when Jim Crow was still the law of the land. My mother and father couldn't rent apartments because of who they were, because of the color in their skin. They couldn't have jobs because of who they were, because of the color of their skin. There were playgrounds we couldn't play on because of who we were and the color of our skin. I was born under the Jim Crow laws of this nation. We're separate, but equal was the law of the land, and denied my mom, my dad, my people, equality in America. And I came here to say to those city council members, you should resign immediately. You've taken much too long. Restorative justice begins by allowing others to work with you to restore that community. And let me say to you, to Gil, Cedillo, to all of you, black people gave up their lives. Their children were murdered in their churches. Students were beaten at lunch counter tables. Martin Luther King was murdered and assassinated so that we could pass a civil rights and a voting rights act that made me a freer man and my people a freer people in the United States of America. Have you forgotten? We stand on the shoulders of those who shed their bloods and gave their lives. How many of us don't remember the speech of Martin Luther King the day before he was murdered? He said, I may not get there with you, but I've seen the promised land. I've been to the mountain. And they've taken us back, but they've also made us come together. And that's what he did. And that's what the civil rights movement did. I and Chuy were elected to the Chicago City Council because we sued the city of Chicago using the Voting Rights Act that black people gave up their lives for. That's how I got a voice. How did I get a voice in Congress? Because Malda sued using the Voting Rights Act so that there could be a 4th congressional district that one day I could go speak in the Congress of the United States. Because they gave up their lives and shed their blood for that Voting Rights Act. Let's remember and understand our history and what brings us together. We are one community. We are one people. You know, we cannot let Donald Trump normalize this kind of language. The hatred and the bigotry and the prejudice that comes out of his mouth must never be condoned in our community. So let me say this. When members of the gay community, the LGBTQ community, when they are offended by homophobic comments and hurt, we understand why. When members of the black community are hurt and offended by racist comments about them, we understand why they're hurt. When Latinos are heard murderers, rapists, bad people that we need to build a wall and that we need to deport from this country, we all understand why we're hurt. We all understand why we're hurt. But you know what this teaches me? If there's only black people in the room, if there's only Latinos in the room, if there's only gay people in the room, we must learn that just when we are amongst ourselves, we must stop and condemn and feel the hurt and the pain against any one of us. So that when black people come together, so when Latinos come together, because all someone had to say during that meeting was, stop! This is unacceptable. Not one of them said, stop, this is unacceptable. Gay people have to say when Latinos are attacked, stop, this is unacceptable. Black people have to say when Latinos are attacked, stop, this is unacceptable. Latinos have to say when gay people are attacked, stop, this is unacceptable. We all need to say this is unacceptable, and we will learn from each other and we will grow from each other. So I just want to say that I was in the Congress of the United States for 26 years. And when they spoke about indigenous people, they mocked, they mocked our own. That's how full of self-hatred they are. They mocked even our own indigenous people. I went back, Roberto, you probably understand this better than most. And we went back, and my mom and dad and all my family, they told me about my grandpa. They told me about how he owned 20 acres of land, how he was self-sufficient. They told me how he was a rural teacher, that he was an educated man, how everybody was like he was just a man of honor and respect in the community because of his education. They never told me he was black. Why is it that families hide such important aspects? I'm prouder of my grandfather because as a black man, he was able to thrive and succeed in Puerto Rico in 1920. That makes him even more greater that he was able to accomplish those educational things because of the barriers that were set before him. I went and checked Jose in the census. He said, Gutierrez, hombre de color. I was so proud to see that and to learn about my grandfather. And let me end with this. After I talked to Jessie and Jose, and I said we needed to do this, I called my brother Lamont. And I said, Representative, you and I will travel together. We know each other's people. I know what's in your heart. I don't want anything to divide us. We've traveled, got many more roads to travel into the future. You represent the future for me. Our friendship is something that just will never be broken. And I thank you so much for being here today because you responded to my call, because you've been such a brother to the Puerto Rican people. Every step of the way we've traveled together on the island of Puerto Rico through those back roads. So I just wanted to say thank you, brother. I want you to take this microphone and speak to the people of Chicago and to the nation, Lamont.
Good afternoon. My name is Lamont Robinson. I am honored to represent the 5th District in the Illinois General Assembly. I want to thank my friends at the Puerto Rican Cultural Center, the historian, Dr. Lopez, and Jessie for this honor. As one of our fathers in the struggle, Congressman Gutierrez, that has continued to speak truth to power. Congressman, your energy, your love for the Latino and Black people has not been ignored. From Dr. Martin Luther King to the Honorable Harold Washington, who 40 years ago fought to pull both communities together, it's not lost on me, it is not lost on my colleagues. I stand today with the Puerto Rican Cultural Center to denounce and ask that those 3 city council members resign immediately. We cannot have elected officials in 2023 to divide a community that has the same struggles. We know we have a lack of affordable housing. We know we have inadequate schools. We know we have inadequate health care. And for those city council members, or any city council members or elected official across this country, to put hatred out and separate us, we are against you. And we will not tolerate anyone that wants to separate these 2 communities, 2 groups that the senator stated are siblings. The African American community, the Puerto Rican community, the Latin community, we have the same issues. We have the same bloodlines. And so, to the United States of America, to the people of the city of Chicago, understand that we have to be unified.
Yes.
The struggles that we face in Humboldt Park are the same struggles that we face in Inglewood. And so, to both communities, let this be a wake-up call. Let this be a wake-up call that we have to be united in order to move cities like Los Angeles, cities like Chicago, forward for people that have been kissed by nature's sun. And so today again, I stand in solidarity with the Puerto Rican Cultural Center. I stand in solidarity with my brothers and sisters in Los Angeles that we will not allow this to move our fight for unity for the African American and the Latino communities all across the United States of America. This is again the call for us to come together. Harold Washington did this 40 years ago, and we're still fighting the good fight. But we have new blood at the table, Congressman. New folks that takes your energy, your love, your knowledge to make sure that we move our people across the finish line. The work of Congressman behind me is not in vain. He has allowed many of us the honor, the mentorship to stand and listen to him. And although we are all hurting, I want to speak to you again, Congressman, to let you know that you have friends, mentees, that are going to make sure that finally we celebrate Harold Washington's dream. of making sure that we have unity between the black and brown communities. Thank you and God bless.
I'm going to decir porque es importante, it's very important, especially for our black brothers and sisters, to know that we speak to our community in our language. And they are here. Quiero ser claro, estamos aquí como mujeres, como hombres, como líderes de esta comunidad, como personas de todos los colores, para denunciar los comentarios racistas, homofóbicos, antiindígenas de 3 latinos en la Asamblea Municipal de Los Ángeles. 3 miembros de la Asamblea Municipal de Los Ángeles que ya tienen que renunciar a su puesto por haber traicionado a su comunidad. Nosotros también somos hombres y mujeres de color. Así que estaban hablando de mi nieto. Estaban hablando de mi abuelo. ¿Sabes de quién estaban hablando? Estaban hablando de nuestros héroes. Albizu Campos, Roberto Clemente. ¿Ah? Ellos estaban hablando de ellos. Recordamos algo. Y como le dije a mi hermano, Lamont Robbins, ¿sabes? Le dije a mi hermano, miren, los negros sacrificaron su vida durante la década de los 50 y los 60. Sacrificaron sus vidas. Sus niños murieron en iglesias bombardeadas. Sufrieron. Su líder fue asesinado para que un día yo pudiese ir al Congreso de los Estados Unidos. ¿Cómo se atreven a atacar a la comunidad negra si nosotros estamos donde estamos por su gran sacrificio? Eso es inaceptable para nosotros. Y entendamos bien claro que en esta comunidad nosotros vamos a crear. Sí, we need to be restorative, but we also need for them to resign. We also need for them to move on so that we can begin that process of healing. And I call upon all of us. Today's not the end. Roberto. Today's the beginning. Today's the beginning, right? Next week, let's call it. Let's talk among ourselves. Okay? Let's bring black leadership, let's bring Latino leadership, and let's begin that dialogue as we continue. Because if we just do it today, it's going to happen again. We've got to face this in our community. We have to face this in our community. If they said it, others are saying it, and it is unacceptable. But we must also have this as a teaching moment. So I just want to say, I'm so happy. And you know, I want to say thank you to Chuy. You know, because he has one hell of a schedule. And he told me if I text him again, he was going to call the police. But you know what? You know what I said to him? I said, you're the leader, right? You're the congressman, right? You got to be there, Chuy. He made time. He made time. Thank you.
This moment calls for our solidarity, and solidarity must move beyond showing up to protest, putting good votes in city council and the state assembly. Solidarity must look like the violence against black bodies is the problem of the Latino community. The disinvestment in black communities is the problem of the Latino community. That when we see and hear anti-blackness in a room, that we confront it and not stand silent. That immigration reform is the problem of our black brothers and sisters. That the decolonization of Puerto Rico is the problem of our black brothers and sisters. That coalition building, community building, and championship of each other's issues is our collective goal. We can no longer stand silent or allow folks like Nuri Martinez and her colleagues to divide black and brown communities. Solidarity must look like action and no longer be symbolic. And there is no one who teaches us better around what solidarity looks like than our executive director, Jose Lopez.
I wasn't going to speak, but Jessie sort of forced me. But I just wanted to say that as a historian, it's extremely important for us to use this moment to reflect on a historical problem. In 1903, Du Bois wrote a book, the great African-American scholar, Du Bois, The Soul of the Black Folk. And in this book, he says, the problem of the 20th century is the problem of the color line. He could have written, the problem of the 21st century is the problem of the color line. He could also have written the problem of the 19th, the 18th, the 17th, the 16th century was the problem of the color line. But he would have to stop. Because on a day like this, October the 12th, 1492, a man by the name of Columbus landed on an island in what today is Bahamas and declared himself as the discoverer of a vast continent which had thousands of years of history, and that history was totally reduced to ashes. So, I tell my students, historical problems are like personal problems. If you don't resolve them, they will continue to somehow appear. When you have a problem with your loved one, when you have a problem with whoever it is, if you don't resolve it, it continues to fester. And that's what happened here. On October 12, 1492, we inaugurated modern colonialism. And the way to justify, morally justify modern colonialism, the taking of people's lands, resources, and labor, was to create racism. Racism, the color line, was created on October 12, 1492. And then Du Bois wrote something very beautiful. He said, the nation is not yet at peace with its past sins. The nation is not yet at peace with its past sins. Think about that and what that means. Well, in the faith traditions, what are you taught? You're taught that the way to be able to reconcile, to be at peace, you must ultimately confess. You must ultimately own up to what you did. But more importantly, faith systems tell us that there must be some sort of atonement. And if there's no atonement, you cannot forgive, and we cannot be at peace. In order for the nation to be at peace with its past sins, it must own up to 500 years of colonialism and racism, and we have to enter a process of reconciliation that can only begin with an acknowledgement of what that system of oppression has created, and how, as Cristina so eloquently stated, we are not only impacted by racist ideas as white people, we're impacted with racist notions as Puerto Ricans, as blacks, because we have learned to internalize racism, and it's about time we put an end to this. So let's use this moment as a moment of reflection to begin to address a historical problem that has not been resolved. Thank you.